So good afternoon, all of you. Very warm welcome to all of you for today's webinar, which is on sustainable consumption in production, SDG 12, and the topic is will the pandemic will affect the progress of SDG 12. So without taking much time, before inviting moderator to moderate today's session, I will some requests for participants that all the participants should mute their microphone and also off your videos so that we can hear speakers only. And after that, in the question and answer session, you can type your questions on chat box, not to speak, only chat box you can use for writing your questions, and moderator will read your question and will ask a specific question to speakers. So without taking much time, I will invite Mr. George Cherian to invite and introduce our distinguished guest and to moderate today's session. Mr. Cherian.
So we have participants from 23 states in India, and also about 12 country representatives we have. And we also are extremely happy that representatives from UNEP, UNCTAD, UNESCAP, ASEAN Secretariat, and all are joining with us. As all of you know, in September 2015, the global leaders gathered in New York for the 70th session of the UN General Assembly and adopted a document called Transforming the World, the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, which targets. Implementation of these SDGs started, as all of you know, from 1st of January 2016. So this is the 5th anniversary of SDGs, 4 years fully completed. In tune with the global goals, India also had set the national goals, especially 16 goals. As all of you know, 17th goal is partnership for achieving this goal. So 16 goals, India also had set 54 targets and 100 indicators. And among them, SDG 12, as all of you know, is responsible consumption and production, or we call it sustainable consumption and production. India is also having 11 targets and 15 indicators for this particular goal as well. Comparing with other goals, this SDG 12 is the most important goal, I will say. At the same time, it is a mixed box because it is cross-cutting issues are there. At the same time, I will say countries like India, this goal is an orphan. The reason I'm making this statement is other goals, if you look, for example, goal 3, good health and well-being. Immediately we know it is the Ministry of Health is the nodal ministry. And goal 4, it is quality education. So we know it is the Ministry of Education. Goal 6, it is clean water and sanitation. It is Ministry of Water Resources. So like that, if you ask which is the ministry dealing with sustainable consumption, still it is a big confusion in a country like India. So with this introduction, I would like to briefly touch upon 3 scenarios specifically with regard to SDG 12. One is the pre-pandemic scenario. The Asia Pacific SDG Progress Report 2020 says, in this Asia Pacific region, SDGs are unlikely to achieve by 2030 until and unless all stakeholders together make concerted effort. And also this particular report says by 2030, almost 20% of the total indicator, the status will be worse than 2050. by the time we reach 2030. And with regard to some specific goal, this Asia Pacific region is struggling with SDG 12 and SDG 13, which is climate action. Not the question of any progress. It is not even moving in the right direction. SDG 12 and 13, this particular report says. At least 50% of the indicators, no data is available. And countries like India says at least 6.2% of the DGP additional funding is required. At least we need to move forward. This was the condition before the pandemic, struggling to move in the right direction. What happened during the pandemic? That is the second scenario. All of you know, as soon as the lockdown was declared, so we could see some immediate relief with regard to some specific goals. For example, SDG 12, 13, 14, which is life below water, SDG 15, life on land. These goals, we could see some immediate relief during the period of 45 days or 65 days of lockdown, and when the humans were locked inside. Not only in the waterways of Venice, even the off coast of Mumbai, we could see the dolphins and many water bodies, the swan, the Ganges, the fish jumping in the Ganges, or the panther on the road. We could see several media reports how the nature was reclaiming the space. And with regard to the consumption also, the global CO2 emission reduced by 17%. First time in the history after the Second World War, the energy demand was reduced globally. India had seen 30% reduction. Drastic reduction was 5 cities to 45 to 88% reduction. Delhi NCR alone had shown a 79% reduction. And as you know, the Earth Overshoot Day, we observed that on 29th of July last year, and this year it was extended up to August 22nd, because there was a reduction in the consumption of natural resources. But this immediate relief we have seen was only very short-lived, we need to say. Because severe negative impact on, especially on SDG 12, we have started seeing. For example, the tremendous increase in the use of plastic. One report says the use of disposable masks, the sale, increased from 800 million USD last year to 166 billion USD. During this, after this lockdown period, and waste collection and recycling almost came to a standstill. Increase in the use of the sale of the electronic gadgets. For example, the state of Kerala itself had seen 400% increase in the sale of laptop, because the reason was the education had gone online. So several such immediate impact had started seeing. Another thing is during the lockdown, restriction was there, the pollution reduced, but after the unlock started, the number of the vehicles, individual vehicles, the private vehicles in the road increased more than the pre-pandemic level. The reason is because there is no public transport and the physical distancing need to be maintained. So everybody start using individual vehicles, which resulted in pollution level again going up. So whether this pandemic is going to affect the target of achieving the target, that is what we are going to debate today. already it is predicted severe negative impact is there, but at the same time, this is the big opportunity. When the countries are unlocking and making plans to recovery, actually the current trends and the change over our consumption and production pattern towards more sustainable future can be planned. That is the big opportunity the pandemic and the lockdown had created. So with this introduction, I will now introduce the panelists who are with us today. We have Archana Deta, who is currently working with the United Nations Environment Program as the project coordinator for India for Switch Asia Regional Policy Advocacy Component. She is having 11 years of diversified experience in mainstreaming and capacity building in circular economy, life cycle management, etc. Archana holds a master's degree in environmental management, and also before joining the UNEP, she was with FICCI, working as the deputy director, which is the Apex Industry Association. So we have Archana with us as one of the panelists. The other panelist is Eva Elderstrom from the Swedish Society for Nature Conservation. Eva is the director of Department of Eco-Labeling and Green Consumption at the Swedish Society for Nature Conservation. Eva is having more than 35 years of experience in working on different aspects of sustainable consumption. Presently, Eva is mainly focusing on the target 12.2, which is sustainable management of natural resources. She is trying to find a balance where biological diversity, sustainable use of natural resources, and sustainable livelihoods are ensured. Particular areas of expertise are eco-labeling and mobilization for change. Eva is also one of the members of the board of directors of GEN. GEN is the Global Eco-Labeling Network. So we have Eva with us. I welcome Eva. Dr. Usha is supposed to join by 3:20. She was having a urgent meeting with the Chief Minister. Dr. Usha Titus is the Principal Secretary, Department of Environment of Government of Kerala. And she is also holding the charge as the Principal Secretary of Higher Education in Kerala. Being the Principal Secretary of Department of Environment, she is also heading the task force on SDG 12, because the responsibility of SDG 12 is given to the Department of Environment in India. She's has a MBBS and MD degree from the Christian Medical College, Vellore, and she had done her post-graduation in general medicine. She had joined the Indian Administrative Service in 1993 and held various positions with the government of Kerala. I welcome Dr. Usha Titus also to this webinar. We have Dr. Joy Elaman, who is the Director General of Kerala Institute of Local Administration, KILA. KILA is an autonomous institute under the government of Kerala for capacity building and training. Before joining KILA, he was the CEO of Intercorporation Social Development India. Before that, he was the senior advisor local governance with Helvetia Swiss Intercorporation. He also had worked with the UNDP as the moderator of the Decentralization Community of UN Solution Exchange. Dr. Joy is also MBBS doctor, and his master's is in public health. And also he is having a degree in climate change and health from Heidelberg University, Germany. I welcome Dr. Joy Elaman also to this webinar. With this introduction, first I invite Ms. Archana Detta to share her thought on SDG 12 and how the pandemic is going to achieve the targets. So over to Archana.
Thank you for the brief intro, and thanks to CUTS International for inviting us to this forum and sharing our perspective. A very good afternoon to my fellow panelists and the participants of the webinar. Very briefly about the program that I'm working on, Switch Asia. It is a regional program launched in 2007 to promote sustainable development and support a transition to low carbon circular economy in Asia. It is implemented through its very distinct three components: the regional policy advocacy component, in short RPAC, the SCP facility, and the grants. The Switch Asia RPAC is implemented by UNEP, and under this component, we provide technical assistance to governments, supporting them in improving their national strategies and action plans with regards to sustainable consumption and production practices. The Switch Asia RPAC has identified the need to facilitate a dialogue across the region on SDG 12 reporting, with the national activity currently ongoing in India with the Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change to strengthen the reporting process on SDG 12. We are supporting similar activities and projects in other countries of the region. The work that we are doing with the Ministry of Environment and Forest, on SDG 12 monitoring and reporting. It aims to strengthen the national reporting process on SDG 12 by providing a harmonized monitoring and reporting framework, linking the national indicators to the global indicators. In addition, we've been building capacities on the subject through knowledge products, workshops, training programs for both businesses and policymakers. We'll be shortly announcing in-depth training program on SDG 12.7, which is on sustainable public procurement as well. The COVID-19 pandemic has certainly dramatically rearranged the priorities for both developing and mature economies. It is not just a public health crisis, it is also an unprecedented global socio-economic crisis. As we all know, COVID-19 crisis, it has had a largely disruptive impact on global economy, including India. And it is clearer than ever before that we need to fundamentally rework our relationship with nature and redesign our societies to be more sustainable and equitable. The health and socio-economic consequences of COVID-19 make the implementation of all 17 SDGs difficult, but at the same time, it also increases the importance of maintaining the progress. SDGs are even more relevant today than ever before. The response to the pandemic has to stem from actions on SDGs. Achieving the SDGs, it will put us on a firm path to dealing with the global health risk and the emerging socio-economic disorder as we are observing now. Countries that have framework in place to support efforts to achieve the SDGs will be more resilient carbon-intensive economies and infrastructures, as well as environmental health issues and diseases. However, the pandemic has also shown us where many of the weaknesses in our system lie. It has proved that responsibilities to act, they extend from government to private sector to civil society and us as an individual also, if we are to successfully meet the environmental goals. Some of the changes during the pandemic that we've observed in last couple of months have accelerated a new and emerging sector that support responsible consumption. For example, online working or locally sourced production, as we've observed. We've now tested these alternate ways of working, studying, and consuming at scale. And this can help us leapfrog some transitions to a more responsible consumption and production pattern. The pandemic has also necessitated the mobilization of large-scale government stimulus measures and packages to measure the health and socio-economic crisis. At the same time, it is important that these stimulus measures and recovery package, they take a longer-term view to trigger more resilient, more inclusive economic model, which is built around green principles. The recovery policies and the investment, they should incentivize circularity and inclusive sustainable consumption driven approach that includes renewable energy, smart cities, smart buildings, green and public transport, sustainable food and agriculture system, and of course sustainable lifestyle choices. Strengthening a future readiness for a post-COVID-19 scenario by achieving the SDG 12 targets. It'll be an early action on a long-term agenda to address climate change, reduce pollution, and improve the waste management infrastructure. In the end, I would like to say that science and knowledge, the science and knowledge that is needed to achieve the Agenda 2030 is already well advanced. And the current crisis should encourage greater action, better collaboration and knowledge sharing for the public good during this decade for action. Thank you so much.
So let me invite Eva Edustrom, Director, Department of Eco Labeling and Green Consumption from SSNC. So over to Eva.
Thank you very much. And thank you very much for inviting me and to be part of this very interesting seminar. I am based in Sweden, as you've understood, and Sweden is, of course, as other countries, also affected. You're probably aware of the strategy that we've had in terms of handling the COVID crisis. We have somehow been perceived to have a very strange strategy. Our society has not been completely held back during the situation, but rather the schools have been open and there has been, fairly accessible activities, like some people have actually been able to go to their work and others have been staying in the house, of course. And we have been, I think, reported as having a very, scary tactic in a sense. We have had a high rate of deaths, but currently we see very little of a second wave, which might be, the other side of the strategy that Sweden developed. Regardless, our economy has, of course, been affected very much. And to give you some examples, the GDP has been, calculated to end at -9% compared to previous years. And as for consumption, there's an estimate that our general consumption will be down by 10%, which is, from a historic point of view, unheard of in the last years. We've always tended to have a slight increase of consumption. We've also seen that the pandemic, of course, has affected our patterns of behavior. Some have been beneficial for the environment. We have not been flying like any other country, of course, hasn't done. And as a consequence of that, people have vacated a lot inside Sweden and have visited nature a lot, which for an organization like mine is a huge plus, since we have the possibility of engaging people and understanding how important it is to preserve nature. And the more people who enjoy being in nature, the more keen they will be to preserve this beautiful landscape or the places where they now go for activities. We've also seen that consumption patterns have decreased rapidly in the terms of fast-moving consumer goods, like clothes or shoes and the similar, whereas food has increased because we have not been going to restaurants. And this is perhaps patterns that will change over time. We've seen a slight increase in the consumption of textiles and clothes, and online shopping has increased dramatically, but mostly by people buying food or goods from the pharmacies. As for Sweden's general handling of the pandemic, we as a lobby organization and an organization which apart from working with consumption, also work with influencing the general policy, have been very focused on trying to shape all the money that has become available for remedying some of the effects of the pandemic. And we're talking in the range of 10 billion euro in Sweden, apart from the sums which are also being made possible to use for this purpose in the EU. And we've, together with other major environmental organizations, we have stressed the necessity to not start society again at the place we were before the pandemic, but rather to use this opportunity to transform society and leapfrog, as my colleague said earlier also, into what we foresee as being more correct actions and long-term sustainable situations. And we want the money that is made available to also come with conditions on the kinds of activities which are made by the companies, and also which companies can get subsidies to restart their processes. Of course, we have a huge labor problem when people are laid off, and such a rapid transformation as a pandemic causes will, of course, alert a lot of forces on both sides, both the ones who want everything to go back to where it was, and the others who see this as an opportunity for transformation. We have also stressed that we see very little point in giving support to climate negative activities. And we want this situation to go back to, sorry, and somebody is talking and it's not to me, I guess, sorry. We want also all the activities to be analyzed and monitored so that the activities financed by this relief money is delivering the results we accept. And something which we find extremely important is that the government in its actions, both internally and towards the rest of the world, will be strong in upholding principles of participation, transparency, and not using this pandemic as a reason to restrict the mobility of civil society organizations or access to information, so that there can be watchguarding of the processes coming in. Further, we have continued with more detailed suggestions also for the government. And we highlight that Sweden needs to be active also in the international arena regarding climate issues. And of course, climate is an indicator of our consumption patterns as a society as a whole, but it is a focus and it is measurable and quantifiable, and therefore we need to keep focus on that. We also stress the importance of raising awareness about the necessity to preserve biological diversity, which of course also is extremely threatened by our consumption patterns and our constant exploration of new resources and land mass for purposes of production. We want all subsidies and supports which are generally negative for the environment to be phased out. There are enormous sums of money going to subsidize fossil fuels, for instance, in the agriculture, which is really a very counterproductive measurements. And very relevant for this seminar, we want sustainable use of resources, of everything we do, to be a key in all the activities and all the measures that are developed from now on. And this then comes down to certain concrete areas, like having installments of dialogues in society of what sustainable use means. You're all familiar with circular economy as a concept. We find that this is very open still and not very precise, and seems to be less focused on the reduction of total use of resources and more on recycling. And hence we want sustainable use to be an active part of the dialogue. And we want particularly the way we elevate reuse as a key element of the circular economy, to prevent the circular economy to just go from linear to a quicker recycling perspective. And now, George, I'm unsure of my time. I forgot to set my clock.
Yeah.
You want me to conclude, perhaps?
Yeah.
Okay. So we are thinking that goal 12.2, as George pointed out, the amount of resources are really the key issue for our survival, and we need to shape our society according to that. And this will in turn give us benefits in form of climate relief, and of course sustainable use of resources needs to be fairly distributed, and we would propagate a common effort to try and develop measurements, calculations that countries can relate to, like we do when it comes to climate emissions, where we have the picture of the ton per capita cap. We would like similar efforts to be made for natural resources. Otherwise, unless you measure something, it's very hard to understand if you reach the goals. So thank you very much for my time, for your time. And my electricity suddenly came back.
Yeah.
So I will be with you until the end, which is good, I think.
Yeah. Thanks, Siva, for that sharing your thoughts on SDG 12 based on your vast experience. Now we will move to the next panelist, Dr. Usha Titus. Hope you have joined. Dr. Usha Titus. Can you hear me? I think she could not join yet. So we will move to the next panel is Dr. Joy Element. Dr. Joy, over to you to share your thoughts on the theme.
Thank you, GC. Good afternoon, everyone. Okay, let me start. So actually today we are talking about SDG 12 mainly. And the question was, will the pandemic slow down? But did we really start with regard to SDG 12 is the first question. Second, of course, is the question, or in the concept note, we are also mentioned about the opportunities also, what the pandemic offers us as an opportunity also. So first, as I said, at least with regard to SDG 12 and many others, I am still worried whether we really took the real steps to meet these goals. Okay, that's one. Then of course we can also complain about the COVID-19 and all kinds of things, and it has actually derailed the whole mechanism, not even this thing. Of course, with regard to, because SDG 12 talks about sustainable consumption and production. And with regard to consumption, we can argue, in a way, we can argue that it has shown some changes in the consumption pattern. But I'm not sure whether it is a sustainable change in the consumption pattern. The lockdown might have actually contributed to some sort of changes in the consumption pattern. But consumption pattern is basically about attitude as well as behavioral change, not about an individual. It is about a behavioral change of the community itself. So we need to have we have a long way to go to make it sustainable. Especially we have to also see how the uh, opening of the lock has contributed to the consumption pattern. That also we need to study. We are actually into a festival season, and we have just I'm just starting to observe how it is going to affect the consumption pattern. But of course, there has been some changes, probably positive kind of thing. But that is about what we are talking is about those who can afford consumption. Whereas we also need to talk about the vast majority of the population in our country as well as in many other countries. They don't even have the time to think about consumption with the various other issues which have come in during this time of COVID. Say we need to actually consider the livelihoods issues. It has affected a lot. Poverty, hunger, employment, health, waste management and sanitation, the issue of land and water. Education is getting affected when you are talking about sustainable consumption and production. How is it going to affect the education process, the skilling process? Also, let us think about the disadvantage, the elderly and other vulnerable populations. And of course, the climate change issues, the epidemics, endemics, disasters, and all to come. So when you are talking about sustainable consumption, as well as sustainable production, we need to think a little bit more on all these things. I mean, I was actually interested to hear from GC Jocherian. This whole SDG 12 is an orphan. But then my argument would be that, did we really try to give this child to the legitimate guardians? Because whether it is consumption or it is production, and if it has to be sustainable, we need to think about the local. If you are talking about the local, then we need to think about the local governments. And how are we trying to do that? And especially the SDG 12 needs a lot of support and patronage at the local level by the local governments. So we need to really think about the local government. So there again, this SDG 12 cannot be achieved by approaching it just as a single SDG. Lot of convergence needs to happen. Integration needs to happen, whether it is in the thematic area, whether it is in the sectors, whether it is in the money matters, whether it is in the actions. All what we are talking is about many SDGs coming together for a sustainable consumption and production pattern, because it's all interrelated, first of all. So we need to think about that. Since I talked about local governments and the role of local governments, here in Kerala, we have been trying to approach this in a different way. Not different, I would say, everybody is doing that, but a few focus areas we have tried to. We have a 12-point program developed, which actually talks about hunger and poverty, but it's also about consumption. We are trying to have around 1,000 people's hotels, reduced rate as well as the nutritional food provided. We also are trying to have organic vegetables cultivation, farming, and local employment assurance program. Around 5,000 new enterprises at the local level, which will actually cater to employment as well as livelihood opportunities. And we are trying to do also the skill mapping, so that especially we have the expats coming back, so their skills are mapped, so that how we can go ahead with various enterprises in that way. And also we are trying to deal with the disasters and climate change in that way. And accordingly, we have also started thinking about a short-term plan and a long-term plan, where at the local government level, we are having a new program called Subiksha Kerala. We started thinking about a couple of months back itself, because why we thought is actually, we usually get food materials from outside, majority. So we need to be self-sufficient at the time now onwards, because agriculture and farming are going to get affected in all the states in India due to the pandemic situation. And so we need to be self-sufficient and self-sustainable. So Subiksha Kerala actually talks about the food security, also food production, self-sufficiency in food production, value addition to the products or the, especially this thing, and then new employment opportunities, and then the environment protection. So that way we are actually working with the local government, under the leadership of the local government, which coordinates the activities. All the relevant departments can come together. We have a SDG federation called the Kudumbashree. They come together, volunteers come together, those who are coming back from the other states and countries to Kerala, they have to be there. And the cooperative movement also needs rejuvenation, especially at the local level. So what I was trying to say is that we need to restart our machineries, but also we need to start thinking with more focus on sustainable consumption, which is about behavioral change, which needs to be addressed very seriously. But we also need to think about the vast majority who cannot even think about consumption in this COVID times. And the second part is about future, the short term and the long term, where we need to work on enterprises and also self-sufficient food security and related enterprises, including livelihoods and employment opportunities and whatnot, especially focusing on issues of climate change, disasters in the future also. Thank you as a first intervention. Over to Sir George Cherian.
Yeah. Thank you, Dr. Joy, for sharing your thoughts on SDG 12. Now we have a few questions. We have received several questions, but due to the time constraint, we will take it up a few questions. But before that, Dr. Usha Titus had joined with us. I have already introduced her. Dr. Usha is the Principal Secretary, Department of Environment with the Kerala Government of Kerala. Now I invite Dr. Usha Titus to share her thought on SDG 12. Already Kerala is making a lot of wonderful initiatives related to the target of SDG 12. Over to Dr. Usha Titus. Dr. Usha, can you hear us?
Yes, I can. I hope you can hear me as well.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah, I'm very sorry for joining in late, but thank you very much, Dr. George Cherian, for inviting me to this webinar. I could listen to Dr. Joy Element's, at least latter part of his talk. SDG 12 is on responsible consumption and production. Overall, the Niti Aayog has definitely placed Kerala on top as regards the achievement of SDGs, but specifically on SDG 12, we are really not on the top. We need to go, we need to walk more, we need to make more efforts so that we are able to achieve the goals of SDG 12. Having said that, I must also say that Kerala has taken initiatives in achieving SDG 12. Dr. Joy Element talked about the Subiksha Keralam project, which is, encouraging the cultivation locally of local products, vegetables, fruits, food grains, so that, we are able to grow locally and, in a responsible way, in a sustainable way. And alongside, I must say that the Kerala State Biodiversity Board has embarked on a mission to support custodian farmers. As you know, custodian farmers are farmers who for years have been growing particular genetic strain that is highly local, but which are enriched with various qualities. So these custodian farmers we are supporting as part of responsible production. We also took a landmark decision last year to ban, which came into effect on January 1st this year, to ban single-use plastics and to lay down a policy for EPR. We would be, meanwhile, we are aware that the government of India has come out with a framework. So we are looking at how we can take the EPR policy through to ensure that the producers, the importers, the distributors of plastic act responsibly as regards the disposal, the management of the plastic waste. A couple of years ago, 2 years ago, actually the fishermen were off coast in Kerala, Nindagara coast and Shaktikulangara coast in Kollam district, actually embarked with the help of the Harbour Engineering Department on a project which they called Clean Sea or Sujitwa Sagara. And in these 2 years, they were able to collect 55,000 kilograms of plastic waste from the sea every time they came back with their fishing pole. After fishing, they came in and they handed over the plastic to the department, and the department was able to engage with the public works department so that the plastic was shredded and it could be used along with tar for doing the roads. And this project has enabled to raise the awareness on the responsible, our responsibility to the seas and the species therein, as well as provide employment to about 26 women from the fishermen community as they were engaged in segregation, washing, drying, and shredding of this plastic waste. And another program which Kerala has been running for a few years now is responsible tourism. People's participation for planning and empowerment through responsible tourism was an initiative that was launched by Kerala a few years ago. And the main objective of PEPA was to discover new zones or unexplored destinations that are pretty rich in tourism potential and develop them in a sustainable manner with the active involvement of the local community. As Dr. Joy Alaman mentioned, the people's participation is key to governance in Kerala, and we have empowered the three-tier panchayat system in Kerala, and this responsible tourism scheme also falls back on the active involvement of the local community, so that the ecological and the cultural fabric of the destination that is opened out to the tourists is preserved. Now, we've also pretty much ensured that a green protocol is implemented in all functions. Government functions, definitely, sports, whether it's sports or whether it's entertainment, and even for private functions in the state, which means weddings. Typically in Indian weddings or Kerala weddings are big, massive weddings, but to reduce or eliminate the use of plastic and to move in with green, elements, so that, and this has come to be known as a green protocol in the state. And again, people have taken to it well, and the local bodies are also encouraging the grading of waste at the source of generation and the use of eco-friendly materials rather than disposable glasses and dishes. We have, the state of Kerala has also announced an e-vehicle policy, and this is again to ensure our environmental sustainability, to ensure efficiency of transport along with energy efficiency and conservation. We have already, the Department of Transport has already signed an MOU for manufacturing the EV components in Kerala in one of our public sector units. Specific mention must be made of Alappuzha district, which is recognized by the UN Environment Program as amongst the 5 cities in the world that are working towards curbing pollution through the sustainable solid waste management practices. Here, the municipality has really gone in a big way to ensure the segregation of waste at source, setting up household and localized composting setups, and encouraging responsible consumption. And the hotels in particular have been encouraged, and they have also come into the loop so that food waste can also be minimized. Whatever waste is generated is put into biogas plants and the energy used. Yesterday in the higher education department, we have close to 75 government institutions, both arts and science colleges, training colleges and others. And we took a decision in the working group yesterday to set up biogas plants in all the government higher education institutions in the state. And this is with the assistance of the National Institute of Rural Development. Now, the aim is that we treat the food waste at the source, and we are able to generate energy for the lighting, as well as, of course, use the biomanure that's generated for greening of the campuses. Another attempt at responsible consumption. These are some of the things that we are doing. As I said, we have a long way to go to ensure that we achieve the goals 100%. We are still at the halfway mark as regards SDG 12 is concerned, but we have almost 90% moved into electronic files in the secretariat, 90 to 95% moved in for electronic files. Again, an attempt to reduce the consumption of paper and thereby the cutting of trees. So the use of e-office across all offices in the government has helped in a big way to reduce that consumption and production as well. With these words, I would return to Dr. George Cherian. I would be happy to answer any questions that are fielded to me. Thank you.
Can you please unmute, sir? Can you please unmute?
We can't hear you.
Jisu, can you please unmute yourself, please? Sorry, sir, we can't hear you. Can you please unmute yourself?
Can you unmute, please?
Yeah, we could not hear you. Can you please unmute yourself?
Dr. George Cherian, we can't hear you.
You can hear me now?
Yeah, now we can hear.
Yeah. I will start with the questions with Dr. Usha Titus. The first thing is, what do you think that is the challenge? Because you said in overall ranking, Kerala is performing very well. In SDG ranking, it is not there. So whether it is, but you are doing a lot of, wonderful things with regard to the sustainable consumption. Whether it is the problem with generating the data and the reporting, Also, I agree, before you joined, I was telling SDG 12 is a mixed bag. Though the nodal department is Department of Environment, if you look at the indicators, indicator number 1 is regarding groundwater withdrawal, and indicator 2 is regarding use of NPK, which the Department of Agriculture is dealing with. Indicator 5 is regarding the municipal solid waste. So whether the coordination between various departments is an issue. So what is the challenge in your view for SDG 12 in moving forward?
Yeah, that is the biggest challenge. The fact that one ministry cannot really coordinate and make others move towards the goal. Now, in such situations, normally in the government, we put the chief secretary in charge so that all departments come together. But chief secretary gets saddled with umpteen number of meetings. Therefore, wherever there's a coordination, that has to be effected. What you said is possibly true, Dr. Jacharya, that we are not really collecting all the data regarding regarding the multiple activities that we are doing, especially since these activities are scattered over 1,034 odd panchayats. So there are some panchayats who do extremely well, the local bodies. Some, of course, do not. So the data collection is one big challenge. And 2, yes, we don't have nodal officers in each of these departments who will push the agenda, which includes groundwater extraction and the use of NPK fertilizers. And so there, yes, we do have an issue there, but that part about NPK fertilizer, we are dealing it differently by encouraging in Subiksha Fairlam the use of organic farming and giving a huge fillip to organic farming. So we are not again capturing the proportionate use of this fertilizer and nitrogen in it. Municipal solid waste is a big bugbear for us. We have actually not been able to implement it in the way it should have been. Now, the collection, the segregation, the disposal is the responsibility of the local bodies. Now, we have a very highly empowered local body system. However, despite the focus that is given at the state government level, the local bodies have not been able, all the local bodies, but a majority of local bodies have not been able to set up projects that can take care of their solid waste. We have close to about 100 municipal local bodies. And these municipal local bodies, due to the inherent problems in managing a local body, they have not been able to set plans up which would have taken care of this. So, obviously, the government doesn't have a punitive measure to ensure that. We hope that we do have a mission program which is called Sujuta Mission, which is running for several years now, about 10 years now. So they do go to the local bodies, they pass on money. Right now, the collection and segregation is through groups of women, self-help groups of women. They are called Harita Karma Senas. So they are the ones who go to the households to collect. But once they come in, they sort of have these collection facilities. But from the collection facility, you should have a means of recycling them or treating them, which is quite difficult to establish, mainly because when the discussion comes up in the municipality, the unpalatable decision has to be taken as to where it should be located and how it should be run. And this not in my backyard syndrome comes in. And therefore, most local bodies have not been able to establish a centralized facility, at least the municipalities. That's a challenge. We are working on it. Now, of course, there are regular meetings at the chief secretary's level, almost monthly basis, so that, a few waste to energy plants are set up, a few anaerobic treatment plants are set up. And we hope, but the movement in that direction is pretty slow because, not all local bodies are the same, and we have close to 100 of them.
Thank you, Dr. Usha, for sharing the efforts made inside and to address the challenges within the government system. Thanks for sharing with us. I think Dr. Archana need to leave now, so I will ask a question to Archana Dutta. Archana, are you there? Archana, can you hear me? I think she had left. I will come back to Archana later.
Thank you.
Eva, oh, sorry, yeah. So you are representing mainly the coordinator for India of Switch Asia. I know Switch Asia is working in the Asia and the Central Asia region from 2007, promoting the sustainable consumption and production. So based on your experience in other countries in the region, you have shared few thoughts, how we can promote more responsible consumption in India. What is the main challenge that you think, and what should be the focus of our advocacy with the government? You are also the responsible policy advocacy component coordinator. So what should be, so our key advocacy with the government to promote more responsible consumption? Over to you, Archana.
Thank you for that question, and it's a difficult one to address, but I'll try to answer based on my experience of having worked with the government over past 1 year. In terms of sustainable consumption and production, the report that you were talking about, which tells that the progress on SDG 12 is not much. We've not achieved much progress on SDG 12. It may be true to a certain extent, but if you go in detail in that report, I think the missing link is the data. There is not much data which is available at the moment on SDG 12 for reporting purpose, and that's the reason why it is not being reported from the region at the moment. There are a lot of initiatives specifically from the government of India side. If you look at the recent schemes, there are a plethora of schemes which address the sustainable consumption and production part of it. Look at the zero effect, zero defect scheme. There is a draft resource efficiency policy already in place, waiting for cabinet approval. We already have star labeling programs. So there are many policies in place which are ultimately going to support the transition towards more sustainable consumption and production patterns. What is required right now is basically in terms of the implementation of these policy initiatives. There is a vision, but then the implementation part of it is where we are lacking. And I think if we can address that, we'll be able to meet these challenges.
Thank you, Archana, for that response with your experience in working with the government. If time is there, we will come back. Now I have a question to Eva. Eva, based on your main focus on 12.2, you have shared about your thought. What is your specific, advice or suggestion to a country like India for sustainable management of natural resources? Along with that, based on your involvement in the eco-labeling, I would like to ask, can we take eco-labeling as a tool to promote or to generate the consumer demand for sustainable consumption and production? You are well aware about the eco mark in India, though in 1991 it was started, it is still a non-starter. What do you think that is the key problem there? And can you share your thoughts on the linkage between eco-labeling with SDG 12? Over to Eva.
Thank you. It's a very bold question, and I'm not very bold to give you a reply as to what India should do. It seems a bit, not in my place. But any crisis bears the fruit to change, which is, although this pandemic is very sad, I still think that there's an opportunity there for new behaviors, new visions of what a good life looks like that might enable or facilitate our joint work in getting consumers to rethink their current lifestyle. I mean, Swedes have understood that they do not need to fly abroad for their summer vacation, for instance. And I do think that this will mean that they will, to a larger extent, not reflect this as their primary option for coming vacations, although the pandemic might allow us to travel. That's my hope. But of course, there are always competing interests that want to support different things. So as for India, I think the basics is, of course, that my hope is that all those good behaviors you already have in terms of helping each other, supporting each other, and not just looking at, expanding economy in terms of purchases and new types of services which are not sustainable, might be helped by the pandemic, and rather to go and re-explore the good practices that are already there and should be elevated to a higher level. And as you know, George, and for the others, we do collaborate together in the hopes of being able to learn from each other. When it comes to eco-labeling, of course, we are also pondering this question. We have a situation now where eco-labeling is also sensing that some companies do have a major problem in delivering their products in the market, and others are thriving. And as for eco-labeling as such, there are elements in eco-labeling criteria that promote resource efficiency, but it's very hard to eco-label the circular section that comes after the purchase of the product and the production of the product. And that is an interesting challenge, how to address that, unless we focus more on promoting non-virgin materials, for instance, or processes for better design or repairability or extended guarantee systems. But that's other types of steering mechanisms that could be joined with eco-labeling. And also for the Indian question, India has high ambitions, I hope, in reality, with enabling this eco-label of yours to find its way into the market. But ultimately it depends on both the producers wanting to disseminate among themselves with the help of a trustworthy green symbol, as well as consumers recognizing and wanting to make a change in the way they purchase. And this is, of course, a question which demands that you have help from other actors, making this that this capacity is there for both sides to be known. And it's a huge country. I can't imagine the kinds of challenges anyone trying to launch that type of a system would face. And you're not alone in the struggle to develop an eco-label and establish it. So to find a key target audience that could be the sort of pioneers might be one way of trying to address. And then you have to find the key area where consumers are most concerned and where eco-labels can deliver benefit. That would be my suggestion. But I'm not, I think we will have future fruitful discussions, I think. But I think your position in the Indian society will be the best, gateway into the eco-labeling success, which I'm sure will come in the future in India also.
Thanks, Siva, for sharing your thoughts and also for that specific suggestion. Now I have a couple of questions to Dr. Joy Ellaman. You spoke about a lot of initiatives taken by the government of Kerala in promoting sustainable consumption. But Kerala is not India. The condition in various states, it varies. And based on your experience in working at the national level, you have moved to Kerala only recently. So what is your suggestion in promoting the sustainable consumption, especially the SDG 12, and mainly giving the responsibility to a more responsible guardians, into the hands of the guardian. So what is your suggestion for a country like India? That is number one. Number two, you work a lot with the local self-government and urban local bodies. If you look at the indicators, like I mentioned earlier, the implementation task is mainly with the local, governments. We have already mentioned, Dr. Usha had already mentioned about the municipal solid waste and things like that. So whether it is a lack of capacity of the local self-government in progressing with regard to these indicators, whether we need to focus in that area. So specifically linking with the indicators of SDG 12, what do you see as the role of the local government?
Okay, thanks for the two questions. One, you mentioned about Kerala is not India. Actually, especially with regard to the SDG 12, I would say Kerala needs to learn a lot from other states also, because in many parts of our country, at the local level, a lot of things have happened, and we also need to learn from other states. There, one thing is about, there are certain things with regard to the consumption where it's, as I said, it's a behavioral change. It depends upon states and communities and societies. Whereas when it comes to production, of course it relates to the local level, but then we can actually have a concerted effort on focusing certain strategies and other things. So we need not think about whether Kerala did, so whether it can be replicated, but it's actually about knowing, sharing with each other and then learning from each other, where Kerala also needs to learn from others, especially in various other things like the waste management, like consumption pattern, the production things and all. But especially with regard to the local level, our Kudumbashree SDGs are some sort of a model for production patterns, but there is also cross learnings also happening. And many parts of India at the local level, the SDG movements, the neighborhood groups are also into it, especially with the national rural livelihood missions also. A lot of things are happening. So we need to actually share these ideas and work towards the same goal, SDG 12, because it's about leave no one behind. So that is how I take that. So that's it. Second one is with regard to the waste management and other things, which are, or even for the other things. See, first of all, we are not separate islands. When I am talking about local governments, I do not want to mention that local government has to be a separate island working. We need to work in a framework where, as I said in the earlier talk itself, that we need to have integration. We need to, not only with regard to the thematic areas and other things, also between the tiers also. So one, of course, in many cases, the decentralized management would be better than a centralized management. Whereas in certain cases, we need to think about centralized management. In such situations, higher levels or higher tiers of governments have to pitch in. In certain cases, it's a support, the technical support which is to be provided. In certain cases, actually implementing. And this is how Kerala is also moving forward. In certain cases, where we need to have centralized management, we have all, even the legislation has also been done on managing it at a centralized level in cases where that has to happen. But overall, I would still say, because of the density of the population in the state, in many places, it would be the decentralized waste management strategy which might work. As we have shown it in, for example, Alleppey, or in many other municipalities, like in Thrissur, Kundamkulam, and many other places. We also, some of you might have also listened to our webinar on waste management, where things happen. But for us, there is another issue which is coming up. We are a fast urbanizing state. Country itself is urbanizing, but urbanization processes the highest level of urbanization is happening at the moment. In 2011, it was around 29%, but then in 2001, it was 29, 2011, it was 47, and now it is almost up to 60% urbanization happening. And so it will also have all new issues coming up in terms of consumption, sustainable consumption. And also, as all of us know, we also have the issue of peri-urban rural governments, which you call it rural, but they are almost urban. So our problems are complex, where we need to work together, not as islands of local governments. We need to have different tiers of local governments coming together, tiers of governments and local governments coming together and working towards certain. So it is not one size fits all. We need to have strategies, and where in many of the cases, the decentralized management, that is how the segregation happens, because the real issues are actually at the segregation at source level, as well as the transportation and plant level. So it is not about the single technology. So where I would still prefer in normal places, no usual places, to be the decentralized waste management would work better, and that has been shown in many parts of the Kerala also. But again, there the real question and issue would be the behavioral change issue. That has a lot to do with waste management. Especially, you're talking about segregation at source. It's about behavioral change. So we need to move further on that. So we have not reached anywhere at the moment, but we need to go ahead. That's it. Thank you.
Thanks, Dr. Joy, for sharing your thoughts on this, especially the need for working together and underlining the need for behavioral change, and also at the national level, learning from each other with regard to sustainable consumption. Due to time constraint, we are not taking up any more further questions. But before we moving to summing up and vote of thanks, any of the speakers want to share any final thoughts? They can use the time. Dr. Usha, you want to say something as the concluding remarks?
Actually, I'd just like to say that thank you for focusing on this SDG. It actually is a pretty key SDG that we often lose sight of. Look, I know when we focus on the other SDG 1, 2, 3 and all that. So I mean, and in the Kerala context, we need a focused effort in this direction. And so I'd just like to say thank you. And we hope to learn from such webinars even more.
Yeah. Thank you. Eva, you want to share anything?
Well, I also want to say thank you for inviting me and giving me this opportunity to learn. And I'm also, as my previous colleague said, the pandemic do bring some benefits, like the possibility of having these meetings, which we learned pretty quickly and installed pretty quickly, and now we have even the possibility of interacting globally. I also want to just remind you that this pandemic has showed us that where there's a will, there's money. So in order to get money to come to the areas where we see the huge need, like in consumption, obviously, there's the ability of getting societies to reshape and funding activities. And since a lot of money now is available for funding the restart process, this is an opportunity that we should really try to make the most of when influencing the parties that actually sits on the decision-making power. So thank you once again. And I've learned a lot. And well, all the best.
Thanks, Eva. Please remain for a few more minutes. Now I request my colleague Amardeep Singh to sum up and propose the vote of thanks.
Yeah, thank you. So it was very good discussion. So on behalf of GUTS International, organizing team, and let me call it fraternity of sustainable consumption and production. With all together, I extend heartily a vote of thanks to all the speakers and gracing your presence and sharing your inputs and thoughts with us today in this webinar. I would like to say special thanks, big thanks to our speakers, especially Archana Datta from Switch Asia, to share your strategies at Switch Asia and sharing your thoughts with us. Of course, the deep sense of appreciation for Eva Eddystone for sharing the global context and also talking about eco-labeling, circular economy, and all those aspects here in this webinar. We are also grateful for Joy Element joining from Kila, Kerala, for sharing your thought with us, especially about the role of local bodies in sustainable consumption and production. Also, the talking about the issue of capacity building, and of course the behavioral change issue, which is very much required under this program. Yeah. Am I audible?
Yes, yeah. Carry on.
Also, we express our sincere thanks to Dr. Usha Titus, Principal Secretary, Department of Environment from Kerala government, to share the Kerala government's initiative in the state also, which is very encouraging for other state as well as the participant who are attending, how they can these states can also implement such initiative in their respective states. And of course, a special thanks to our moderator, Mr. George Cherian, also to share your thoughts with us and also to set the background very well for this discussion today, and also successfully moderating the discussion by asking relevant questions. Last but not the least, our participants who are joining from various states or of our country as well as different parts of the world. So I would like to extend very thanks to all the participants who joined us today for this webinar. And we hope that today's discussion, today's all this, the inputs which we received from our speakers will be helpful for understanding the SCP and to achieve the target as it is intended. And also to bring those sustainable consumption and production, those ideas and thoughts in our programs, and also in our whatever work we are doing. Hope we will get those ideas, and it will be helpful for us to achieve the sustainable development. So thank you very much, all of you. Thank you again.